Okay, hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, back with a quick video analysis. And this one is I'm going to try and share a particular idea for finding chess moves. And this is looking at the downside of our opponent's last move. Because every single move in a chess game has some downsides. Even some of them might seem academic, right? But every move has a downside. Even one e4. The very first move, you might be thinking, how can, like, this is probably the best first move, how can it have a downside? And the downside, there's two of them, is that first, this pawn is undefended, and so in theory, it's an object for black to attack. And if you think about most of the major opening systems, the French defense, the Berlin defense, Sicilian, especially when black plays the knight f6 and the bishop to b7, very often black tries to get counterplay or force concessions by attacking this pawn. And then also, it's kind of academic, but by moving the pawn 2 squares, that weakens slightly these pawns over here. We can imagine that if white ever plays c3 or c4, well then this square is very weak. Now, again, you could say, okay, who cares, right? But c3 or d3 isn't a weakness right now. c3 is a normal move. Everything is great. And again, that's true. But every move also has, again, there's a long-term potential for this weakness here. For instance, if you've ever looked at the famous game Paulson-Morphy, which I'm just going to put here very, very quickly. White played c3, and Paulson was going to play d4 next, push the bishop back, and everything would be fantastic. But look what happened. The e4 pawn moved, the c pawn moved, and so now this square is completely undefended. Morphy ended up playing queen d3, and in just a few moves later, he was able to unleash one of Morphy's all-time great combos, starting with queen takes f3. And then there's this mating attack that follows. If you've never seen this, look it up. Paulson-Morphy. It's literally the first thing that'll pop up if you search that in Google. Right? And so it's true, if white had never played e4, right, in the beginning, then there would be no huge weakness here. Now, of course, 1e4, there's so many good things about this move as well. We bring the queen out, we bring the bishop out, we're controlling the center, everything's fantastic. Right? I mean, it's the best move for a reason, or one of the best moves. But every move has a downside. And we're looking through this game, the game that I played earlier today. It was a blitz game, so I didn't have a lot of time to think. And it was based on most of my ideas, especially the difficult moves, were based on what were the weaknesses or what are the drawbacks of my opponent's move. Here, on move 2, my opponent plays e6. Let me just get rid of this blue here. All right? Every move has an advantage, every move has drawbacks. Actually, that's not true. Not every move has an advantage, but every move does have a potential negative at least. Again, black has, a whole bunch of moves. Often it's between d6 and e6. Okay, he plays e6. What's the advantage? Well, this bishop is able to potentially come all the way out. What's the disadvantage? Notice how there's now several pawns. So that means this bishop can't come in. That's going to be a theme. Pay attention to that. And also, by playing e6 instead of d6, see how d6 controls e5? e6 doesn't. And so, potentially. All right? Now, again, you might be saying, Smithy, this is just theory. Who cares? It's like, no. We should be able to look at any chess position, any chess move, and be able to, dig in, to dive deep. Let's take a look. So I open it up, d4, takes, takes. He attacks my pawn. Now, he doesn't have control of e5. In a perfect world, I'd push forward. But he's got this, not that, queen a5 check. He's going to pick up the pawn next move. And black simply, he's up a pawn. So that's why you play knight c3 first. My opponent played g6, which is a fairly ugly move. What's the disadvantage? Look at this. Look at these squares. Whoops, not that one. All these squares are so weak now because he has all of his pawns on light squares. Also, he didn't do anything to stop my e5 idea. So I come forward, e5. He played knight h5. What's the disadvantage of this move? Knight's on the edge of the board. It can barely move. So I attack it. Nice and simple. I could have played g4 as well, but bishop e2 develops a piece. They're both good moves. My opponent retreats the knight. What's the disadvantage of this move? Well, that's now 3 moves out of his last 4, and out of the first 7 opening moves, just moving this knight. He's falling behind development. He also can't bring his bishop out here anymore. Whoops, not there. Right there. He's falling behind development. How do you take advantage of someone who's falling behind development? Well, you finish your development, you castle, you open the position up. Right? That's basic opening theory, basic theory of attack. So I develop. Bishop f4. He brings his knight out again. So that's now another move with the knight. Do I let it sit there? No. We should think about punishing it, right? And wasting time. I played g4, which is okay. If you were thinking knight takes, and then however he takes back, this is excellent. This is even better. Because look at this. We can play queen d3 or queen d2 next. We're going to castle. We are pretty much fully developed against his absolutely nothing. We've got moves like g5 to open things up, with or without f3, h4, h4. And we got potential knight d5 sacrifices coming in. And yeah, this position is horribly bad for black. So if you thought that, excellent. g4, another good way of doing it. He takes. Very, very similar. Near full development, he's got absolutely nothing. Knight c6. What's the disadvantage of this move? And honestly, this is where I kind of stretch this concept a little much. There's almost nothing wrong with this move. It's developing a piece. It's developing the tempo, attacking my queen. And so it's hard to do much better than that. Now that said, hypothetically, this knight used to control this square. It used to control that square. Now it doesn't. So those squares are a bit weaker. That said, no one cares about a6, and d7 is firmly protected by everything. And so knight c6 has very few disadvantages in this. However, in the vast majority of cases, even it might just be academic, every move has a disadvantage. Queen e3. He plays queen a5, so then I'm just going to castle. So look at this. Perfect, nearly fully developed. He hasn't castled. Let's just open the position up. Now here my opponent goes a little bit insane. He plays h5. I honestly think that he missed that I had a bishop here, because after take, he almost certainly wanted to take with the rook, because that would bring the rook into the game, and then he's pressuring. He'd be pressuring this pawn. Maybe he can come down here or come here or something potentially. But because I have a bishop there, he can't retake, and so he's forced to take back with the pawn. And so what's happened? Sorry, let's go back. So after castling, h5, take. So what's happened? What's changed in position? What's the disadvantage of playing h5 and then, of course, g takes h5? Well, now the g file's opened up. So let's get there before he gets there, before he has a chance of putting his rook or his bishop. He plays b6. What's the disadvantage of this move? Well, first we should ask ourselves what is the advantage, or what is my opponent's idea, right? And by playing b6, he very likely wants to bring this bishop out. He would love to bring it out on this diagonal, of course. Imagine this bishop suddenly appearing here, or even here. That'd be great. But he can't, because these pawns are in the way. Now, if we were to go all the way back to move 2, when he played e6, 2 pawns on makes it very hard to develop this bishop. If he played d6, again, bishop would be wide open. But he didn't. Let's go back. And so that means in this position, in order to try to develop that piece, he ends up playing b6, another pawn move. Still behind development. What do we do? So again, as a clue, let's ask ourselves, what's a disadvantage of this move? Yes, it's a pawn move. Yes, he's not behind development. But what else? What's a disadvantage? Okay, so the pawn, by being here, it's weakened these squares a little bit. Okay, that's true. What else? With the pawn here, the queen can no longer retreat. There's a pawn in the way. And so I play knight b5, threatening knight c7 check with the fork. And this move is extremely powerful now because the queen can't jump in. Right? As soon as he played b6, my first thought was his queen can't move. That means it can't go back to c7. And I know that when the king is in the middle, c7 is a great forking square. And so I played this move in, looks like 10 seconds. And I thought of it a lot faster. I had to make sure, a little bit scary, he might be able to take this pawn and then give me some checks. But he's only attacking with the queen. That doesn't matter. I'm going to pick up at least a rook and maybe more. So we ended up playing rook b8. He made a move, then I played king b1, now he can't take my pawn. And in truth, a disadvantage of this move, a disadvantage of every move, is that every move takes time, is a tempi. It's your turn. You can only move one piece, one pawn on your move. So he couldn't play rook h8 and queen takes a2, right? He only had to pick between one of them. And so he chose to save his rook. And so then the disadvantage of his move is he didn't take the pawn. I was able to protect my pawn. Now again, this might be stretching the concept a little bit, making it kind of, again, this academic theoretical idea. But it's there. Every move does have a certain disadvantage somewhere, if you look for it. My opponent plays knight b4. So he's attacking this pawn, so, I mean, that's pretty clear. I should defend it, so I kick him back. And then he ends up playing knight d5. What's the disadvantage of this move? Now again, at first blush, you might be thinking there's a lot of advantages. It's here, it's on a great square, it's attacking this, it's fully defended, but it can also be attacked. And I spent absolutely no time. Rook takes d5, e takes d5. What was the disadvantage of my opponent's last move? And we can see it. With this pawn here, all of a sudden, this pawn is free. It can march forward. And if that pawn goes forward, which is exactly what I did, it opens up the bishop. Opens up the queen. Uh-oh. Everything is now coming in, smashing down at black. And he's completely defenseless in this position. The best move here is, well, best, quote unquote, would be trying to play d takes e6, trying to keep the pawns in front of the king. Trying. I could win the rook right away. Imagine that's a good arrow. Even better is to play queen to e5, because then I could win the rook with the queen, and then the queen is down the back rank. It's pinning his remaining forces. Imagine I'm able to take this rook, then I can play this or this to win the bishop, or if I take this guy, he can't defend that bishop anymore. I'm just going to win it, and even if he doesn't win it, again, I can't win it. I've got one of these checks coming in, and it's completely game over. In the game, he ended up playing rook to b8, which just lets the floodgates open completely after take, and then knight d6 check, boom, boom. I stopped calculating here. I didn't need to calculate anything more. I have every piece just staring, right at, there's absolutely nothing he can do. And in fact, after he played queen a4, simply queen e7 was checkmate. So that's pretty nice, pretty simple. Again, as I was playing this game, I know I've talked about, academics, and, sometimes it's just theoretical, but no, many of the hard moves that I played in this game, if you want to call them, were simply using this idea. What is the disadvantage of my opponent's move? He plays g6. He did nothing to stop e5, so I go in with e5. Knights to the edge. I attack it. Right? He's wasting time, so I attack it. Okay, I'm going to castle. Everything is great. He opens the g-file for me. Okay, I'm going to move the rook over to the g-file. No problem. He plays b6. What's the disadvantage of this move? Now the queen, it's stuck over here. The queen can't come back to defend. c7 is incredibly weak. So I jump on in. And then he moves his knight here. Imagine that he moves his knight back. Straight back. Okay? Black's position is terrible. The computer says it's losing. We can kind of see that, right? He's got really one piece developed. White is absolutely dominating. But it's not so clear how to actually break through, what the next move is. Right? There's a whole bunch of good possibilities, but there's nothing immediately decisive. When he played knight d5, that gave me, that decisiveness, something to latch onto, something to explode the position. And it really didn't give me a choice. I mean, if I move my queen, he's going to take my bishop. If I don't move my queen, I lose my queen. Right? So, of course I take. And now, because he's wasted all this time and now the position is open, the attack simply flows through pretty effortlessly at this point. Okay? And again, my opponent isn't a weak player. Look at this. He's rated over 2,000 in Blitz. Like, higher rated than I am. Higher rated than I think I've ever been. Right? He made a couple of bad moves, and then they spiraled out of control, and, that was unfortunate. But where I found the good moves, where I was able to capitalize, was thinking, what is the disadvantage of my opponent's moves? I will find another game coming up, and I'll go through this even a bit slower. This is just a Blitz game, just for fun, and I thought it was a pretty cool attack. I wanted to share that. Look at this. Look at this. Amazing. And, sometimes you want to, humble brag a little bit. Like, yay, I beat someone over 2,000. I'm almost 2,000 again in Blitz. Woohoo! Right? But this idea can be extremely powerful if you apply it. Right? And it's very good at finding blunders. If you ask, what's the disadvantage? Right? Oh, there's a piece undefended. Can I take advantage? You can. Boom, you win the game instantly. So I'll try and find another game that really goes over this. That can really, really help. But in the meantime, the next time you analyze one of your games, or you're playing a game, keep this idea in mind. Every move your opponent makes, what's the disadvantage? You can also ask it about yourself. Every move you make, what is a disadvantage? That can help stop you from blundering. Okay, well that's going to be it. So I'm SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. If you want to leave comments or likes, all that great stuff, that'd be absolutely fantastic. I love talking about chess. Let me know if this is helpful. And again, later this week, I'll try and have a more detailed follow-up. But that's that. Okay, so thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.